story, I will eat your face. Mortimer and I stood on the balcony at the entrance of the temple. We gazed at the forest beyond the chasm. Looming trees extended over the distant mountain, covering it. I heard a new creature in the forest. A Wendigo. Both of us could see in detail the fight between the Wendigo and the forest dwellers. The house blessed me with this sight. As for Mortimer, he's a deity who had chosen to remain with me at the house. I am unaware of his full capabilities, and I don't ask. I looked at him to find him focused on the forest. Averting my attention back there, I saw our next guest. A tall, gangly, grey Wendigo, with long limbs and deep-pitted eyes. It showed its pen-shaped teeth, grimacing as a paw clamped down tighter on its arm. That sound again. The Wendigo screamed as it slashed at the boar, ripping it to ribbons. The boar fell to the ground. The Wendigo continued ripping at it. He kept slashing at it with his huge claws until there was nothing left but mincemeat. All around it, yellow eyes appeared. The Wendigo ran. Quick, zipping between the trees and bushes. The yellow-eyed creatures gave chase. A winged serpent took to the sky, hunting, gliding towards the Wendigo. It screamed at the intruder in its forest. A yellow-eyed wolf jumped, mouth gaping at the Wendigo. Whack! The Wendigo sliced its face off with one blow. The wolf hit the ground in 2 parts. The Wendigo kept running. Mortimer looked at me. "It is formidable," I said. The Wendigo kept running, leaping over fallen logs and galloping on all fours when it found open ground. Quick. I could hear its streamlined breathing as it reached the chasm. The serpent darted at it. The Wendigo kept running. The winged serpent opened its mouth. The Wendigo was almost at the chasm. Fire spat at the Wendigo. The Wendigo made it through the chasm. The winged serpent turned and glided back towards the forest. Then something unexpected happened. Wendigo turned back through the chasm, watching the forest. It laughed. Throwing its claws in the air, it mocked the forest dwellers. Turning, it entered the chasm, disappearing. I crouched down to Mortimer's level and brushed my hand around his neck, forging a thick silver collar around it. Mortimer looked at me. I pulled out a slim silver pen from my lapel pocket. "This will be sufficient." Mortimer descended the stairs. I followed. We walked to the entrance of the house. I opened the door and we stepped out onto the porch. Black mist coiled and swirled, ticking and clicking. It was quieter than usual today. We watched the mist unravel as the Wendigo stumped towards us, hunched shoulders, covering a large patch of ground with a single stride. He came to the porch and stopped. Mortimer and I waited, looking at it. It placed his foot on the first step. Immediately, it turned into a young, athletic woman in compression tights, trainers, and a sports bra. A red hoodie matched the color of her hair. Her right arm, mangled and bleeding. She took a phone out of her pocket and checked herself, pushing strands back over her ears. One hand doing all the work. No signal here, either. "I need something for this," she said, holding up her right hand. I kept my gaze on her. She took her hoodie off and wrapped it around her bleeding right hand. May I come in? I gestured at the entrance. Mortimer took a few steps back. He kept his eyes on her. You don't fear me. You are not the first of your kind to come here, I said. My name is Gretchen, Oceana, she said. I touched my right hand on my heart and gave a gentle bow. Please, the lounge is to your left. Gretchen entered my home. She went into the lounge and sat down on a chair, her eyes looking around at the walls. She leaned back, throwing one leg over the other. A wounded hand was held in her lap. I took my seat as Mortimer went to his rug and sat down, head on paws, eyes on Gretchen. Your dog does not trust me, Gretchen said. I suppose you want to know how I became one. Let me guess. Something along the lines of, I don't know, hiking through the woods, got separated from my friends and was trying to get back to them. When I got bit, Gretchen looked at me. It wasn't really that traumatic. I made a mistake in trusting a man who was supposed to be in love with me. Oggy, my boyfriend at the time, a chef, came back from a filming trip in Alaska. The chartered flight he was on crashed, killing the pilot and our camera person. He survived, but he was different. I nursed him back to health and all was going well. At least I thought it was. I didn't know this at the time, but he had killed my best friend, Amy, and kept her flesh in our fridge. He was eating it to sustain his craving. He fed some to me. The next day more, and more after that. He kept doing it, and I was insatiable. Gretchen's eyes flecked from cerulean to black, deep pits. Mortimer looked at her. They changed back. So you see, it wasn't my fault, and now I have to deal with it. Gretchen unwrapped her hoodie from her hand and took a quick look. She then wrapped it up again. I will say this, it wasn't all bad, once I gave in to the craving. My senses shot through the roof. I thought I was operating on a good level before, but this was eons higher. I was coming up with ideas that would have never occurred to me. I could really work. Focused work, not multiple breaks work, for hours without coffee or regular food. The new me was awesome. Clean skin, vibrance, strength, not to mention my libido. I believed I could achieve anything I set my mind to. Until the cravings started again, at least. If I didn't eat, they got worse, spiraling down. All I could think about was ripping flesh off someone's face and consuming it. Gretchen looked at the flames in the fireplace. I'd lose it all, so I ate. The more I ate, the more ravenous I became until this happened. She looked at me. Her eyes were black pits. She raised her right hand, only her fingers were spindly with sharp claws extending from them. She exhaled. Her eyes returned to their normal state. Don't think for 1 second, gatekeeper, that I do not know what I am. She looked at the flames flickering in the fireplace. Oggy was different than me. He achieved that new perspective too, if he ate. But he could also keep it in check. He would keep some meat refrigerated, sustain himself over a week. He thought I could do that too. Bless him. Gretchen smiled. Her eyes flicked to black pits for an instant. A smile turned into a sober gaze. We had guests over for dinner before our restaurant, Crave's, opening. It was our big night. This restaurant was going to be fantastic. Crave was going to be known all over the world. Well, that was our plan. I was giving the male guest a tour of our kitchen facilities and furnace in the basement. Despite all the noise of the machinery, all I could hear was the blood pumping in his veins. I could see the veins in his thick, big neck. Juicy. Oggy found me on top of him. My hand dipped inside his neck, dripping blood. I pulled the flesh out and ate it. I didn't care. I wanted more. Oggy pulled me off the man. He tried to revive him. Me? I was at a heightened state. I walked upstairs and thrust my claw into his wife's torso and pulled out her heart. I love a fresh heart. She tastes better than he did. Some like smoked bacon, others like unsmoked. It's a preference that goes out the window when you have no choice. Gretchen smiled to herself. What I am, I have no choice, and I hate Oggy for it. God knows I do. I had a life before this, you know. I was a YouTube influencer for fitness and nutrition. My channel was doing well. The business was growing, and then I met Oggy at a convention. He was a talented chef but needed help with running his channel, so I plowed in. I ran both his channel and mine. Things were looking good for both of us. We got to the opening of our restaurant, a young couple with 2 growing businesses. Gretchen returned her gaze to the fire. Now all I can think about is eating someone's face. Oggy had a different opinion. He burnt the restaurant down with me in it. He nearly succeeded, but my friend Monty got me out. Gretchen unwrapped her hand, inspecting it. She wrapped it up again, and then her eyes turned to me. They were dark pits once more. She gritted her teeth as her face stretched from the chin. Her jaw slackened, exposing a gaping hole with 1,000 sharp pins. Wendigo had appeared. Mortimer rose onto all fours. You need to control yourself. This house is not to be trifled with, I said as I reached into my lapel pocket and concealed the silver pen in my palm. Her feet extended into these long, pale limbs that reached the wall. I forgot to say, Gretchen growled. I like being a Wendigo. I will not ask again. I'm ravenous. Gretchen unbound her right hand to reveal a repaired claw. Was wondering what you taste like, gatekeeper. She lunged at me, claw aimed at my throat. I parried her with my hand. She yanked her claw back and inspected it. Silver. Mortimer leaped onto her from the side, clamping his jaw around her neck. She grabbed his neck but could not clasp it as the silver burned her talons. Bastard, she said. I stood, holding the pen in my right palm. I stabbed it into her heart. Only it slid in effortlessly, as if the hole was already there. I tapped my finger on the end of it, pushing it further in till only a centimeter remained. Useful hole, I said. How do you think I died, bastard? Wendigo turned back to Gretchen, lying on the floor with her neck in Mortimer's mouth. He released her. She flopped on the floor. Unable to breathe, she looked at me. Shaking her head, black mist rolled into the lounge, foaming and curling, clicking and cracking. It enveloped her, raising her off the ground. Take her to the pit, I said. Wait, please, Gretchen said. In the pit, you will be eaten as you have eaten others. Please, she said. No Wendigo can abstain. Have mercy, gatekeeper. I looked at her. I know 2 that have. 2 out of many that failed, but 2 nonetheless. I nodded to the black mist. It slid Gretchen out of the lounge and vanished downstairs, heading to the pit. I exhaled. I looked at Mortimer, who nodded. I strode out the lounge and turned left, down 2 sets of stairs. I turned right and stopped at the first door on the right. Gretchen still struggled, trying to break free of the mist. I opened the door to an empty warehouse. It had a door in the floor 50 meters away, the pit. Mortimer exuded a brilliant sphere of light. It encapsulated both of us. We strode in. Black mist rolled in. Gretchen still held within it. The warehouse snapped to pitch black. I looked up to see the being that guarded the door. Its horns burned with red flames. Human eyes looked down at us, only it was the size of a mountain. Its palm hit us. Mortimer's effulgence held as the giant clawed palm slid off. "What is that?" Gretchen said, her eyes wide, staring at the enormous beast, part matter, part shadow. It appeared humanoid, only it had a bear's muzzle and sharp red teeth that protruded from its mouth, with cerulean eyes watching us. Today, it is the oldest Wendigo. I looked at Gretchen, who had tears rolling out of her eyes, but she did not make a sound. I reached into the mist, sliding my fingers into her torso. I pulled out my silver pen. "I'm sorry, I need this back," I said. A large clawed palm slammed the effulgence above me. Again. But Mortimer's effulgence held. "Mortimer, take Gretchen to the pit." I looked at Gretchen. "You are better off down there than here," I said. "Huh." Gretchen breathed. I stepped out of Mortimer's effulgence. He dashed to the trap door, keeping his effulgence around the black mist as it carried Gretchen. The oldest Wendigo looked at them, then at me. It grinned. It came at me. I slammed my cane on the ground to extend it into a spear, a foot taller than myself. The shock of energy it released made the Wendigo cower. It had a hint of blue to it, I must say. I focused and uttered a mantra as I held the silver pen at its tip. Removing my hand, the pen was welded there. Swipe. A claw swung at me, pulling atmosphere with it. I ducked low, letting it pass. I ran at the oldest Wendigo. It watched me. Whack, whack, whack. It pounded its claw at me. I bobbed and shifted direction as it broke the concrete floor with each hit. Whack. Hit the ground again. Dig. I speared the back of its claw with enough thrust to push the pen deep beyond the skin. Twist. I rotated and recoiled my cane, pulling it free. The silver pen was stuck in its claw. It yanked its claw back, howling. It held it like a human would hold a wounded hand. Cerulean eyes watched me as it backed away. The oldest Wendigo disappeared into the pitch black. I watched the black mist release Gretchen. She fell into the pit. "The creatures down there are more your size," I said. Her scream faded as she fell deeper. All manner of creatures shifted around down there. Mortimer's effulgence prevented them from escaping the trapdoor. They touched it, but it burned, forcing them back. Black mist shut the trapdoor. We walked back to the doorway. The mist disappeared the second it got beyond the threshold into the corridor. Mortimer stepped through. I followed, closing the door behind me. Mortimer scooted upstairs. That was close. Today, it was the oldest Wendigo. I have seen it take many forms. A large dragon, an ice demon, a pterodactyl, and even a hybrid species between a piranha and an octopus. The gatekeeper of the pit shapeshifts into what the soul fears most. Its presence was a tough battle. It took the Divine Mother, Hamish, Mortimer, and myself to get it here a long time ago. We struck an accord with it to guard the pit. In exchange, it can devour any soul that entered its territory. This included souls escaping from the pit, and those taking souls to the pit. A strange accord, I know, but an accord that must be honored nonetheless. I returned to the lounge. Mortimer came over to me. I crouched and slid my hand around his neck, erasing the silver collar that was once there. He went over to his rug, circled it a few times before he sat down, head on paws, closing his eyes. I returned to my chair and sat down, gazing at the flames as I thought of Gretchen. It was remarkable. Her boyfriend, Oggy, turned Gretchen into a Wendigo. She hated him for it, yet Oggy was able to refrain from eating human flesh, thereby remain human. Some can, some can't. I guess it boils down to who you are, and I must tell you this, you decide who you are. Don't let anyone else tell you any different. Oggy will eventually come to my halfway house. When he does, I will introduce you to him. Until then, goodbye for now. See you next Sunday at 11. Godspeed.